So back in June was our first episode of the EF show. We discussed the struggle for farmers in the U.S. to plant crops and different types of food products here in 2019. Now we will revisit that same struggle and reflect on what problems were back in the planting season and how did this year's crop turn out after the harvest. So looking at the statistics, farmers should have had all their crops harvested sometime in October, but instead they were forced into early November if they even were lucky enough to plant crops this year. And that reminds us back in early spring and the late spring into early summer how much rain they were getting in the central U.S. And all of these fields were just vast fields of water. You couldn't even see any soil. So, that has a toll on how many fields are going to be usable. And that it just ruins everything. So an article from the Daily Republic, it gives us an inside look at what exactly it was like for farmers this season. So everyone was behind due to bad weather, said Teresa Hoadley, program director of the South Dakota Farm Service Agency State Office in Huron. In general, everything was behind. The lack of progress in 2019 harvest stems from an unusual wet spring and planting season, which delayed getting crops in the ground and continued moisture that has saturated fields this fall, making it difficult for farmers to get their equipment back into the field. So we had that problem with moisture at the beginning of the year, and the common trend is here we are at the end of the year, and we are getting those same problems that we have had the entire way. So back in October, there were about 4.5 days for suitable field work per week, though compared to the slight improvement over the 2.9 days suitable in early October. So they can't use the whole week, but you can expect to have one or two bad weather days. But looking at it, that's 2.9, so that's 3 days. That's not enough to work on your crops or anything, so none of them are going to turn out as well as they should have or could have. And you already have the soil problem. So farmers are at a massive loss, even if it was perfect the rest of the season. Just at the beginning and the end of the season, it was bad. So many farmers reported being behind 24% harvested at this time in 2018. The average for this point in the season is 29% in mid-October. So you can see that it's not good. So normally, in 2018, it'd be 29%. They're already at 24%. So it's good that they are getting crops, but that number won't get much higher. Because, you didn't plant a whole bunch this year. They couldn't. So Hoadley says that I think we are a good month behind. Many low-lying areas in the region did not get planted at all, and what did go in mostly covered crops. So these low-lying areas, you see them out of the corners of fields. Can't plant anything there because it's just a little pond almost. And when it's the whole field like that, though, even if you got some stuff planted, it's gonna be very sad if it ever grows. So Brad Letcher, East Region Manager for the County Pride Cooperative Office in South Dakota, states that we need to be able to plant next year. We're already looking at a pretty wet fall compared to last year, Letcher says. It is a serious situation, no doubt. And all that's from MitchellRepublic.com, the Daily Republic magazine/website. So many of these crops did not get planted this year at all. So let's look at the farmer insurance industry is doing of this. So an article in the Star Tribune states that more than a third of the U.S. farming income in 2019 will come from the U.S. government. And that's where we look into insurance. So farmers, whenever they have a field and get everything set up, they set up for insurance in case of a bad year. So this year is a prime example of a really bad year. So that's why it helps to have this insurance. So it's good that many farmers did, but the problem is that what we talked about in the first episode was, maybe they won't cover that. And because, at a point, if every single field's gone, I don't know if there's enough money in the world to help everyone. And even all that money doesn't add on to what they could have gotten. So $6.8 billion through May and up another $14.5 billion in a second round announced in May. They have kept farmers close to breaking even. So $6.8 billion and $14.5 billion. That's early seasons. They're kind of planning ahead for that. So look at that. That's over 2 times more at the beginning, into the middle, and then by the end of it, that's 2 times. That's in billions, people with a B. So not only is this a problem, this is a massive problem. You have all of this money that needs to go somewhere and help all these people, but it can't help all these people. So I mean, we're leaving out the part too about the field. That's crop insurance. Field insurance, I don't even know. I don't think it's a thing. So that's crazy. So many of these fields are going to be ruined. So, there's no hope for some of these people, and that's going to make them have to move and try to find a different job. And that's something for some of these farmers who've been doing it their whole life, haven't gone to school or anything. So that's a whole nother problem. And looking at Minnesota, it was the third largest recipient of aid in the first round of payments. That's back at that $6.8 billion. Minnesota got $681 million in funds. Much of the trade aid has gone to the soybean farmers because they are the first that got impacted. Because the corn, it grows up taller, but the soybean, it's only like 2 or 3 feet tall. So if you have that much water sitting in your fields, you wouldn't plant them anyways, because, it's not going to grow. It's actually, the water's higher than they would ever grow. So that's all from the Star Tribune, and it's kind of crazy in my opinion, that all of this can come out of just a little bit of rainfall. And looking back at the numbers, they were extreme, super high amounts of precipitation, and you got the record riverbanks. You looked at them, 47 feet in places, record breaking, never had been hit before. And so all these fields, they started filling up from the river all the way down. In a lot of these places it's flat, so all this water, it's not going to stop, it'll continue. So everyone was affected from this. And I mentioned about the industry and truck drivers and stuff. That especially took a toll this year, because I said previously that they probably would not have a lot of business this year, but what they had, they would definitely have to use. Well, there wasn't anything, nothing. You had to go to other parts of the country to even get some crops. So, you are at a massive deficit from all of this, and it's something that we will remember forever. But, we might not be able to recover from this, because it literally changed the face of the earth. It changed the way it looks. It changed the way it will be forever. So after this break, we will discuss a few more statistics on how farmers this season were affected, and if the insurance is helping them or will help them in the future. So back from the break, the American Federal Farm Bureau is reviewing 2019 crop insurance coverage article on this year's crop. It gives us the exact details on what happened down to the numbers. During 2019, nearly 86 million acres of corn, 13 million acres of cotton, and 1770 million acres of soybeans were covered by crop insurance this year. So that is crazy looking at those numbers. That's not good. Not good at all. So accounting for approximately 95% of corn acres and cotton acres. So 5%. 5% were planted in both cotton and corn. 92% of soybean acres planted across the U.S. collectively. Farmers paid more than $2.3 billion to cover these crops under the crop insurance plans. In March 2019, there were $4 per bushel of corn for each individual bushel, and then for each individual pound, this cost 73 cents for cotton and $9.54 per bushel of soybean. So harvest prices for corn and cotton and soybeans are at $3.90 per bushel of corn, 63 cents per pound of cotton, and $9.25 per bushel of soybean. And crop insurance guarantees that the prices will be higher in returns for the farmers. And what's amazing is that everything's about 10 cents higher, if not 20 cents, on all of the items. So that really shows how that the effect of not having your crops is on the price of things. And so everything drops on how much they earn. So Looking at the USDA, they are projecting a national average of corn yields will fall by 5%, soybean yields will decline by 7%, and cotton yields will drop nearly 4%. So we're looking at a national issue here, not just for the central US. So lower than projected yields combined with lower crop prices this harvest will reduce actual farmer revenues in 2019. The USDA's current projection for federal insurance is for all crops and livestock in 2019 a total of $10.5 billion, the highest since the drought-impacted years of 2012 and 2013, the third highest over the last decade. So these farmers will not only struggle this year, but in the years to come. Looking at their fields, it's amazing to see the destruction of once fertile crop fields. This problem will last forever and is a great example of how climate change is actually changing the face of the earth. And looking back over all this, it's amazing to see where we are at the beginning and the effect at the end. It's one thing I was amazing about seeing, how much precipitation has fallen. You see these river beds and stuff that are just, float over their banks. You see towns that were flooded in the early part of the year because of snow melt, and then you got the more precipitation and it never ran off. And I mean, looking at Google Images, you can see just on a Google satellite scale how much these rivers have overflowed, because looking at them, you see, you started out with a mile wide, not mile wide, a quarter mile wide river, and then now you see it and it's a mile wide. It took up the entire town, not because there's that much water, it's just because that's how much water was flowing at one point. And when you see these totals up in the 40 feet range, we've never seen stuff like this before. So it's literally washing away towns. And if we aren't careful about some of this stuff about climate change, it'll be like that all over. But looking back at the poor farmers and everything, most have to kind of reorganize their thoughts and see again what they want to do. So it's quite interesting to see, what all is going on with this. So we'll see how the production of crops goes as we continue on, and hopefully we can get this reversed and that everyone can start living their lives again. It'll never be the same, but at least we'll have the same and more information added on. So we will actually learn from this and find ways and maybe invent some things that can protect these fields from precipitation and Mother Nature. Well, that does it for this episode of the EF Show. We will have one more episode on Monday, and then we are going to take a Thanksgiving hiatus until later on the next week. So, happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and good luck on Black Friday shopping. So thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for some posts on some upcoming episodes, and have a great week.